All right, so you wanted to know more about Interpol, huh? Data privacy, international crime, all that jazz. Well, strap in because we're diving headfirst into their data rules, the ones most people don't even know exist.
And believe me, they are fascinating. We're talking about the systems that connect police forces across the globe and what that means for your information.
Exactly. And we're going to break it all down nice and easy, no law degree required. Ready for some aha moments?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. It's 2011, a hiker vanishes in the French Alps. Poof, gone. Months go by, and then he's spotted in Thailand. Turns out amnesia, wrong turn, the whole shebang. But how did authorities even connect those dots across continents? That's where our friend Interpol comes in.
Right, and everyone always thinks Interpol is this big, scary global police force kicking down doors and whatnot.
Yeah, like right out of the movies.
Exactly. Yeah. But in reality, it's more like a giant information hub, a way for countries to share intel on crimes and criminals.
Exactly. And one of their main tools, these things called notices. You've probably heard of red notices, basically international arrest warrants.
Right, those are the famous ones.
But there's a whole rainbow of them. Blue, green, yellow, each with its own purpose.
And they're not just suggestions either. These notices can lead to detentions, extraditions. They carry some serious weight on the global stage.
No joke. So Interpol helps catch the bad guys. That's good, right? But to do that, they need information. Lots of it. And this is where things get interesting, maybe a little unnerving for you, dear listener. We're not just talking names and birthdays here.
Yeah.
If you were in Interpol's database...
Oh, it gets very specific very fast. And to understand just how specific, we need to dig into their data treatment rules, kind of the rule book. Article 1, Section 2, it's a mouthful, but it sets the stage. We're talking missing persons reports, details about unidentified remains.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious territory. Missing persons, unidentified remains. I mean, this is some intense stuff. But it gets even wilder, right?
Oh, absolutely. Article 92, for instance, that's where they dive into the world of criminal modus operandi.
Modus operandi, is that like a fancy way of saying?
It's their MO, basically, how they operate, their methods, their disguises, even their favorite escape routes. It's like they're building a global playbook of criminal tactics.
So it's not just who, but how. That's fascinating, but also how accurate can all that be? Criminals change things up, right?
That's the million-dollar question. And it gets to a bigger issue with a system this massive.
Yeah.
The potential for errors, right?
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting. Article 28, you ready for this?
Yes.
This is where they talk about using information from private companies.
Wait, private company? Hold on. Are we talking like our social media data? My Amazon purchases?
You got it. Online purchases, social media posts, it's all fair game, all potentially ending up on Interpol's radar.
Whoa. Okay, so that's a lot to process.
And it brings us to a key point, actually, Article 43, boss. The sheer volume of data they can now analyze. This isn't just individual data points anymore. We're talking massive, potentially unverified data sets.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. What does this actually look like?
Imagine this. You get flagged as a potential risk because some algorithm somewhere misinterpreted your online activity. Maybe you were researching something for a project, or your online shopping habits fit some weird profile they're tracking.
And suddenly you're on a watch list. That's kind of spooky.
That's exactly the kind of scenario we're talking about here, all thanks to these massive data sets Interpol can now access.
And we've got to assume not all of it is accurate.
Exactly. The potential for errors, mistaken identities, even biases creeping into those algorithms, it's a huge concern.
So we've got this mountain of data, some from official sources, some from, well, who knows where, some verified, some not. It's a lot. But the next question is, who gets to see all this stuff? How's it actually being shared?
Well, remember those notices we talked about? Turns out they're just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh boy, there's more.
Article 8 actually reveals this whole network of direct communication channels between countries. They've got these things called diffusions, which are like less formal alerts.
Diffusions? Is that like a global police group chat or something?
Pretty much. Imagine this constant stream of intel flying back and forth between countries. Now imagine that intel getting lost in translation, or worse, misused. And that's where things get really interesting. Because when you look at Article 7, 21, 27, 28, the list of who can access this information gets pretty long. We're not just talking about police forces here.
Oh, no. Who else are we talking about? Give me the rundown.
Okay, so first up, we've got these national entities. And according to Interpol, that could mean a whole bunch of government agencies. Think intelligence agencies, tax authorities, even financial regulators.
Hold on, seriously. So my info, which, by the way, may or may not be totally accurate, could end up with, like, the tax man because of some international agreement.
That's the long and short of it.
This just got real.
And if that wasn't enough, Article 27, it takes it a step further. Even international organizations can get access to Interpol's data.
International organizations, like what? The UN? The International Space Station?
Well, they don't get that specific. I'm not sure astronauts care too much about our data down here.
Yeah,
But it does make you think, right?
for sure.
Who's setting the rules for all this? Who's making sure everyone's playing fair? Because now we're talking about a whole web of data sharing.
Yeah.
Way beyond your local police department.
Yeah.
Way beyond borders, even. It's a big deal.
Okay, so we've got all this information swirling around, different levels of access. Maybe my online shopping cart is being analyzed by some international agency as we speak. I'm not going to lie, this is getting a little creepy.
And it gets even more complex when you realize how they can access this data. We've been talking about specific requests.
Yeah, like if they're looking for something particular.
Exactly. But Articles 54 and 56 mention something called direct access. Basically, it allows bulk downloads of data.
Bulk downloads, so not just looking up a file, we're talking downloading mountains of data, potentially with information on millions of people.
Precisely. And that raises serious questions about data security, oversight, accountability. What happens to all that data once it's downloaded? Who's keeping it safe?
Yeah, who's making sure it isn't being misused? Because let's be real, data breaches happen. And we're not just talking about some credit card numbers here. We're talking about really sensitive personal information. Someone could do some serious damage with that.
Absolutely. And Article 60 does say public disclosure of this data is possible, but it's vague about the conditions. So we're left wondering, what are the rules? Who's enforcing them?
So it's like we're at the mercy of this giant data machine. But do we, the people whose data this actually is, have any say in all of this?
Well, you might be surprised to hear you actually do have some rights when it comes to your Interpol data.
Really?
Article 18, it's buried in there, but it outlines the right to access, correct, even delete your information held by Interpol.
Wait, so I can just call up Interpol and ask them to delete my file?
It's not quite that easy, unfortunately. But the right exists, at least on paper. You can formally request to see what information they have on you, and if it's wrong or you think it shouldn't be there, you can ask for it to be corrected or removed.
Okay, so there's a process, a sliver of hope. But like knowing about that process and actually going through it, those are two different things.
Exactly. And that's where Article 13 comes in. It talks about transparency.
Transparency, yeah, that's always key.
But it doesn't exactly lay out how that transparency is achieved or enforced.
Right, because it's one thing to say you have the right. It's another to actually make it easy for someone to do it. How many people even know they can do this?
That's a good question and a valid point. But for those who do hit a roadblock, there is a mechanism for recourse, actually. Article 135 talks about the Commission for the Control of Interpol's Files.
So there's like an Interpol watchdog?
Sort of. It's an independent body. They handle complaints,
Yeah.
try to provide some resolution.
Well, that's something. You know, it's funny. We started with that image of a hiker found halfway across the world, right?
Right.
It seemed like a testament to Interpol's reach, their power.
Yeah.
And now, after going through all this, I'm left with, well, a lot more questions, to be honest.
I think that's the point, isn't it? There's a lot more to the story than meets the eye.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, they might catch the bad guys, but at what cost? Our privacy, our right to know what information is being collected about us and how it's being used. These are big questions, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
Definitely not. But being aware of the issues, that's the first step.
Exactly. So next time you hear about Interpol, remember this conversation. Remember that there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes. And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to do a little digging of your own.
You might be surprised by what you find.
All right, folks, that's it for our deep dive into Interpol and data privacy. It's a complex issue, but hopefully we shed some light on it for you today. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, thanks for listening.